Hello and welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast with your host, metaphysician, Reiki master, and hypnotherapist, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week, we will discover teachings, tips, and tools to radiate your best life ever with practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate?
Hello and welcome back to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. Today I am so excited to radiate ancient wisdom with Pablo Vazquez, the author of The Sacred Gathas of Zarathushtra and the Old Avestan Canon, a modern translation of ancient wisdom. I'm sure I butchered some of those words, so I do apologize. Welcome, Pablo.
Thank you. No, you did well. Your pronunciation is pretty great.
Oh boy, this master's in linguistics should serve me somewhere, huh? So these old Gathas, what is this book about? It's a modern translation, but a modern translation of what exactly?
Yes. So the Gothas are, well, before I go into that, basically I have to say that Zoroastrianism was basically can be said to be founded by Zarathushtra, who we know mostly in the Upper Western world as Zoroaster. And so Zoroaster lived around, I would say, maybe 4,000 to 3,500 years ago. And the Gathas are one of the oldest religious compositions that we have still extant to us, almost basically unchanged. And these are basically Zarathustra's own words. He was a poet priest, and in this sort of sense, he expressed his mystical wisdom and understanding through poetry. And as such, what we tend to see is that the Gathas are a collection of poems that are a combination ethical teaching, spiritual wisdom, and almost personal diary by Zarathustra, in which he details all the way from the beginning of his calling to the celebratory wedding of his daughter. And basically, the wedding marks basically that he is safe, that the message is being spread, that things are successful now, and the religion will live on, as marked by the union of his daughter with one of his disciples. And so you see a lot of that. You don't just see, a perfect man. You actually see Zarathustra begging for help, crying for help, angry at his own God for not having given him support at certain moments and there's a certain humanization there that combines with a deep and evergreen spirituality and ethical philosophy that still is kept alive this day and has influenced so many different religions, philosophies, governments, and so forth.
Right. So Zarathustra, very old. I mean, you said 4,000 years, right?
Correct, yes.
What part of the world?
Yes, Zarathustra would have lived in what we consider now Central Asia, basically near the northern borders of modern-day Iran. And so we're talking around like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan sort of area. And it's very likely that he may have traveled during the time period of the Gathas themselves between sort of Afghanistan, parts of modern-day Iran, this Central Asian area, all in search of followers, wisdom, and also what was important to him, someone to act as a patron to basically safeguard his new teachings in a time period which was marked by nomadic raider tribes, wars back and forth. He was looking for basically some sort of ruler in this geographic area that would want to be an adherent of an ethical, peaceful, civilized sort of system. And within the text, we find out that he does eventually find someone like that called Vishtaspa, who is viewed as an ethical and good man, and also the first patron of the Zoroastrian faith.
Sure. And so these writings of Zoroaster slash Zarathustra, you said that he really got started kind of around his daughter's wedding to let people know that he's okay, and that everything's going to be fine. Now, what kind of danger, what type of situation was he in?
Yeah, so it goes back even to how Zarathustra was called, which makes him actually very different to the founders of various different religious traditions, which is Zarathustra was not called by a human community or even commanded by a god. He was called by what is named in the text as the soul of the cow. And this is to represent actually animal life, in particular in Zarathustra's time, sort of livestock and friendly animals that aided in human civilization at the time period. And basically, the soul of the cow cries out to the heavens and says, "Oh, will you send someone to protect us?" And what the soul of the cow says in the Gathas gives us a clue as to the times Zarathustra was living in. The soul of the cow asks for someone to protect them from cattle raids, from murder and violence and wrath and various destructive acts. So what we're seeing here is Zarathustra is living in a time that's full of warfare, that's full of thievery and raids, and basically what we would consider in modern times uncivilized. And to Zarathustra, that was the same story. He basically could not stand living in such a world. He wanted a world of cooperation, of peace, of helping one another out, of what Zoroastrians label the threefold path of Asha, which is good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. And so this is where Zarathustra was living and why he embarked on his mission.
Wow. Now, this mission, was this a religious mission? Was it philosophical? Was he considered as a religious figure, a religious icon at the time?
Yeah, Zarathustra in his own time, and we know this because he labels himself as such, he was already a priest of whatever the Indo-Iranian religion was at the time. And so I think and even though I use the word founder, it may be a better word to say reformer or redeveloper, renewal, because he didn't view himself as doing away with the religion that he was a priest of, but rather he believed himself in as he was setting it right. And with that, he not only develops as a priest, but also as a poet, which was viewed actually in this classical era of history, in the sort of the axial age. Poets, philosophers, and priests were viewed as having basically the same job description. Their job was to reveal the mysteries of human nature, of existence, of what is out there. And Zarathustra combined all three in his position, which made him no doubt a powerful and eloquent speaker, and also able to convince, for example, the kings of his land, when he finally found Vishtaspa to convince him. But Zarathustra's own combination of positions would not have been so strange for the time period. For example, if we look at Homer, from the writer of the Greek epics, Homer in ancient Greece was viewed as combination, prose poet, masterful writer, and also almost a mystic and a prophet who spoke of the legends of the gods and delivered ethical truths to the ancient Greeks. And of course, this tradition continues in various cousin traditions of Zoroastrianism, such as Hinduism, where devotional poetry is an important part of, say, Vaishnavite traditions, and also you see in Sufi traditions as well, where being a poet, a priestly mystic, and also, a philosopher is just a combined job description still in some of these religious traditions.
Very interesting. How do we know so much about Zoroaster now?
So it's very fascinating because for a long while we knew very little. In the Upper Western world, there's always been this tradition of the pseudo-Zoroaster. It even has applied to some of the words we use in English. For example, the word magic comes from the idea that the Magi, which were a priestly group within Zoroastrianism in ancient times, that they were the greatest magicians of the land, that they were masters of theurgy and whatnot, and therefore, especially to the ancient Greeks, they viewed the Magoi, as they called them, as being the greatest wizards known to man. And so that has developed to where even our word for magic is Zoroastrian in origin. And so in this pseudo-Zoroaster sort of canon, a lot of it is attributed to Zoroaster was viewed as the founder of astrology, as the founder of magic, as the founder of philosophy, even, and all sorts of different things. It wasn't until basically the 1700s, 1800s that we begin to have philological study in Europe that helped sort of gain an understanding of Sanskrit, Avestan, all these other ancient languages that led us to know deeper what these religious figures were actually about. The benefit of why we know so much about Zoroaster, and of course, one can argue that the sort of fog of history and also biased viewpoints may come into this, but it's because Zoroaster wrote so much about himself in the Gathas. Like I said, it was almost like a personal journal for him. But part of that is also that it is a combination of what we know about Zoroaster, as Zoroaster says himself in the Gathas, and what we know about Zoroaster through legend and myth and story that has been passed down through Zoroastrian history, basically. Scholars also know, especially linguistic scholars, know that Zarathushtra was responsible for the Gathas because the linguistic composition of it and its use of what's known as Old Avestan, which is the oldest form of Avestan. It's the mother language of all Iranic languages. It was all written in Old Avestan, and the structure of the Gathas in particular shows that it must have been written by a singular author. And so in that sense, we know at least that whoever it is that is writing the Gathas is writing about themselves in a way. In that case, we try to apply and say, at least in academia, that this must be Zarathustra.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So that kind of leads to my next question about what the old Avestan texts are. And I figured that was a part of the world, a town or region or something like that. But that really refers to the language.
Yes.
Precursor to perhaps Sanskrit and some of the Middle Eastern languages. Very interesting.
Yes. Avestan is a cousin language to Sanskrit, but both sort of comes from this Indo-Aryan, Indo-Iranic sort of background. Avestan's direct descendant is modern-day Farsi. So, and not just Farsi, but also the Kurdish languages, and even some elements of Armenian and so forth. But one of the things that is interesting about, in particular, about the old Avestan canon is these are the only texts that are composed in Old Avestan. So unlike Latin, another liturgical language, because Avestan is primarily used as a liturgical language for Zoroastrians still to this day, making it one of the oldest languages still used in ritual practice. It is comparable in some ways to Latin in that sense, in that ecclesiastical Latin is still used by, say, the Catholic Church. However, the Catholic Church updates Latin continuously to include new concepts like the internet and so forth. However, Avestan is never updated, which means that, for example, there's someone like me who usually is not that good at learning languages. Avestan actually becomes fairly easy after one gets over the weird ancient structure of it, especially the grammar and sentence structure and the diacritics and everything like that. But when it comes to the texts themselves, they compose not just of the Gathas, they also consist of what's known as the Yasna Haptangaiti, which is the first liturgy of the Zoroastrian community. It was likely composed by Zoroaster as well, or by Zoroaster's immediate followers, as the sort of gathering almost hymns that they would use with one another, that they would recite and chant and the like. And the Yasna Haptangaiti is full of what they consider sacred. So they revere the waters, the minerals of the earth, the air, the fire, so on and so forth. Zoroastrianism is a very elemental religion from its core. It's very ecological in the sense that it considers the earth and all of physical existence to itself be sacred as well and worthy of worship. And outside of the Yasna Haptangaiti is also the 4 sacred mantras of Zoroastrianism. It's a cousin term to mantra. Same thing. It's just an H that's added in there because of linguistic differences. But these 4 mantras are treated like mantras. One recites them throughout their day, during holy events, gatherings, and so forth. And they're viewed as combination prayer, combination ethical lesson, combination meditative moment, in the same way that, say, a Hindu mantra or a Buddhist mantra would be as well.
That is fascinating. My little linguistic heart is just so excited.
Did you know that Radiate Wellness is more than just a podcast? That's right. We're also a comprehensive, holistic wellness practice. Find out about our services, practitioners, and upcoming events at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. While you're there, visit our podcast page to read more about our great guests and even donate to the podcast. If you like our podcast, you can help in other ways as well, like subscribe or follow us wherever you're listening right now. Tell a friend, a family member, or a coworker about the great content you find here. And if you wouldn't mind, please give us a thumbs up, a 5-star rating, or a positive review. Sounds like a small thing, but it really helps. You might like to know about our Facebook communities while we're at it. We have a free community, the Radiate Wellness Community, on Facebook for news and great free content. Our subscribers group is Radiate U, as in the letter U, but also, well, you. There you'll find curated replays of past classes, guest interviews, and more. And now, back to our podcast and back to our guest.
So what are these texts about in this book? And what do they have to teach us?
Yes. So I think it can be divided into 2 categories. One, first, the ethical lessons, which to a Zoroastrian are actually more important than any of the cosmology, any of the spirituality, mostly because Zarathustra places a greater emphasis on the ethics than anything else. And part of this is that there is a sort of ethical dualism at play. Zarathustra asks us to be virtuous as opposed to not virtuous.
Right.
In modern parlance, we may use terms like good and evil, but even those are a little bit too restrictive to describe what it is. So, for example, an ethical lesson I like to use in this situation of what it's like to be virtuous and decide between virtue and not virtue in a Zoroastrian sense is situational ethics. So, for example, if you run across a thief that just stole a loaf of bread, and that thief claims that it's to feed their family, that they're starving, what does one do? What would be the virtuous situation there? To someone with a very dichotomous good and evil sort of viewpoint, one might say, but stealing is completely bad. We cannot condone this. Or they might say, but to feed the family is completely good. None of that matters. But to a Zoroastrian, it's a complex question that requires a complex answer. And there is no easy solution to anything. And this is all built around the central premise of the faith, which is found in the Gathas, which is choice. Zoroastrians do not believe in determinism. They believe that the core value of all existence is free will and the power of choice. Even to the point that to answer the problem of evil that usually rises up in religious and spiritual situations is, why does evil exist? To a Zoroastrian, the answer is easy. Because we are given the choice, and Ahura Mazda, the greatest deity within Zoroastrianism, gives all conscious beings the choice whether to be virtuous or not. And to infringe on that choice would be to infringe on all choices. And so Zoroastrians don't view Ahura Mazda as being omnipotent, but rather omniscient. So because Ahura Mazda stands for wise lord, or lord of wisdom, or sovereign wisdom, however one interprets it. And so this is a god of wisdom, of knowledge. And so Zoroastrians would believe that Ahura Mazda would know all paths everyone is going to take, but it's our choice as to where we go to it. Even the relationship between humans or conscious beings and divinity tends to be different from other faiths. There is no idea of submission or even of total devotion. There is, however, how Zarathustra himself describes his relationship with Ahura Mazda, which is one of Hamazor, which translates to co-worker, to ally, to friend. And he even labels Ahura Mazda as his best friend. And so this is how Zoroastrians view all divinity, whether it's Ahura Mazda, other manifestations of Ahura Mazda, minor divinities, and so forth. They are not beings to cower or beings to just shower of endless sacrifice. They're viewed as one would have a relationship with your best friend, your best childhood friend, so to speak. And I do personally think that is lovely, and it ties into this whole idea of the cosmological elements of it, which is there is a life force that permeates the universe known as Asha. Very comparable to almost the way the Force is used in Star Wars, I like to joke, which is this grand force that sustains everything and that we all have access to. And to align yourself to Asha gives you great benefits, not just in spiritual well-being, but it's believed to also give you physical well-being, to give you clarity of thought, to give you drive and purpose and energy. And so one follows the threefold path of Asha in order to align themselves, which is to have good thoughts, good words, good deeds, or as more proper, virtuous thoughts, virtuous words, virtuous deeds. And this is the sort of path one takes as a Zoroastrian in their everyday lives. The opposite of that would be Druj, which is known as the lie. Think of it as sort of anti-life, an illusion, almost like Maya in Hinduism, in which when people steal, when people commits acts of wrath, of greed, of tyranny, all these things, by the way, are mentioned in the Gathas as horrible acts. So to be tyrannical, to be wrathful, to be a liar, these things are not good and are seen to put the person on the path of Druj instead, which is to lose themselves in the illusion, because Zoroastrians believe in the good nature of all creation, of all conscious beings. And therefore, to commit such acts is not to act in your rightful nature, but instead to lie to yourself, so to speak. Whenever someone tells you, whenever you've done something that is uncharacteristic, they'll say, this is not you. To Zoroastrians, that is core to whenever they see someone committing an unvirtuous act. It is almost like, this is not you. Let us try to brush all that away and get you back on the right path. And within that is also the idea that this is a universalist faith, in that everyone is called to follow this in whatever way is best applicable to them, and which is why Zoroastrians are not huge on proselytizing. They would rather people be ethical and follow the path of Asha than, be almost like me, someone who took on the full conversion and initiation and everything. And along those lines, it is this idea that if there is an afterworld, an end times, so to speak, they will all go to what's known as the House of Song, which is almost like a paradise. And the word paradise itself comes from Persian, actually, paradisia, which sort of is actually meant to refer to a beautiful garden. And to the Persians, seeing a beautiful garden was a reminder of how everyone would be living a afterlife that would be like spending time in a beautiful garden, so to speak.
Right. So these ideas of Zoroastria, were these radical at the time, or I'm sorry, Zarathushtra, I suppose. I'm struggling with these names, but
Oh, no worries.
were these seen as radical at the time? How were they received?
Oh, yes. They were viewed as absolutely groundbreaking. Zarathustra points this out in the Gathas. Not only is he turned away by various other priests and rulers of the lands that he travels through, he's basically exiled from his own home. He is chased down. There is one example in which he chastises a man for giving him two gifts that he never asked for, and gifts in quotation, of course, where he's basically told to sleep on the cold steps outside of this man's house instead of coming in. To not be hospitable, especially in that time period, was viewed as an act of violence. So for someone to not open the door, especially for a priest of the land, would have been a major rejection. So to a lot of the rulers and priests, basically the establishment of the time, this was unthinkable. What Zarathustra was saying would have upended everything that they were doing, especially since, raids and war and everything brought in great wealth for these rulers, and mass sacrifices and the like brought in even greater wealth for the priests. So the Zarathustra condemning these sort of things was just not good. So Zarathustra was popular amongst, say, the common folk, as a lot of, founders of religions tend to be.
Right.
Yeah, and instead was very much chastised until he found good King Vishtaspa, who listened to him and decided that this was a path worth following, because he was tired of war and tired of the wrathful age in which he lived in.
Right. And now Zoroastrianism has taken on, I guess, the trappings of a religion. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. It is. Followers would call it a religion and a philosophy at the same time.
Right. Yes. Kind of like Buddhism, I suppose, although
yes,
philosophy. But so how does one become a Zoroastrian? How does one practice Zoroastrianism?
I would say one can become and practice a Zoroastrian through two paths. It's interesting, like you mentioned, Buddhism, it has its spiritual focus and it has its philosophical focus, and both can coexist at the same time. One can see this in places like Thailand and Vietnam and whatnot, where you see people, for example, have a combination of going to temples and begging the Buddha to give them good grades on their exam, but at the same time you'll have people who are studying the sutras and trying to find the philosophical core of them. And in Zoroastrianism you have the same thing. Anyone can live as a Zoroastrian, practice as a Zoroastrian, call themselves a Zoroastrian, and this is sort of easy. All it requires, like any other philosophy, is a good amount of study, and a decision and a firmness to decide, yes, this is what I am now. And in that same way, it's similar to a lot of Buddhists who do not have to go through any sort of initiation to become Buddhists. They just decide they are and then live as Buddhists. And to a Zoroastrian, that's a lovely thing to see. Even to Zoroastrians like me, who have undergone sort of religious initiation processes. Because, as I said earlier, a lot of Zoroastrians tend to combine the two. To them, it isn't either or. It is, I will live and study and live up to the philosophies of Zoroastrianism, but I will also take part in the rituals and prayers of Zoroastrianism. And this is what makes Zoroastrianism unique. I was recently at the World Zoroastrian Congress in July, and it was the only space in which you could see, because Zoroastrians are orthopraxic. It means that orthopraxis means being a strict adherent to the practices and the ethics and the philosophies of a faith, as opposed to orthodox, which is having a strict adherence to a set of beliefs of the faith. So we all said the same prayers at the same time, attend the same rituals. We all live according to the path of Asha, but in just one grouping, let's say 5 Zoroastrians, you could meet an atheist, you could meet someone who believes that Ahura Mazda is some sort of spiritual incarnate being somewhere. You could meet someone who believes that Ahura Mazda is just the collective unconscious. You can meet someone who accesses their spiritual beliefs through psychedelics. And then you meet someone who considers themselves to be practicing the faith of their ancestors in the strictest way that they believe to be possible. And this is because, to a Zoroastrian, belief is nice, and having beliefs is an important part of what it is to be a Zoroastrian, but that's up to you to decide. And so what is more important is that you live as a Zoroastrian, that you act as a Zoroastrian, and that you gain the wisdom. I mean, Zarathustra himself says to find wisdom wherever you may find it, wherever it is found. So we're not even limited to the borders of our own faith, but rather Zoroastrians go out and they, for example, in India, amongst the Parsi Zoroastrian community there, they celebrate with the Hindus in worshiping Ganesh as well. And for example, in areas like Kurdistan and the like, Zoroastrians there link up with the Sufis and so forth. And in North America, there were, I could say there was a sizable, no doubt, contingent of Zoroastrians at the most recent Burning Man and the like.
Sure.
So what one sees is and it's part of why it has survived so long. Because it is flexible, it is adaptable, and it cares more about being virtuous than it does about, holding the exact same beliefs at all times.
Right. So why did you choose Zoroastrianism? What was your background?
Yes, I was born and raised as a Catholic. I almost became a Jesuit. Obviously, that did not work out. I then went forward and started exploring various different religious traditions. I attended what's known as the Parliament of the World's Religions. It's a sort of large interfaith event, very wonderful. I recommend people search for it, look it up. It's great. 10,000 people, 100 plus different religious traditions all gathered under one roof. And it was there while walking amongst the booths of, what I like to label a spiritual agora, where every different religious tradition had a little booth. They were trying to give you, pamphlets, books, try to talk to you and tell you about their faith. It wasn't an attempt to try to convert anyone, but rather to inform people. And that's what was lovely about it. And for the first time ever, I'd run physically into Zoroastrians. In school, and I'm pretty sure most folks listening know about the sad state of the North American education system. And so in school, I was definitely taught that Zoroastrians were all dead, that it was an ancient religion of ancient Persia and is no longer. So imagine my surprise when running across these Zoroastrians. And I learned from them, I spoke to them, learned that it has been continuously practiced, unbroken basically, since the time of Zarathustra, and which makes it actually the oldest continuously practiced religious tradition. So I spoke with them. They gave me some books to bring back. One of them was a translation of the Gathas, and I read it and I fell in love. Basically, it's one of those moments where you look at something and it just clicks in your mind and you think, this is exactly what I was looking for. And from there, I became obsessed, read everything I could, listened to everything I could, talked to everyone I could, watched everything I could, and eventually ended up getting a master's degree in Zoroastrian studies. So now I'm here today.
That's exciting. Is this your first book on it?
Yes. It is my translation of the Gathas and the other old Avestan texts. So the sacred Gathas of Zarathustra and the old Avestan text is actually an attempt of mine after comparing and reading 25 different plus translations, seeing all the various errors and biases, and some of it all ranged from either simple translation errors, dating from maybe 200 years ago when we didn't know that much about Avestan, to people, for example, Orientalist European academics in the late Victorian era who were trying to make every other religion basically be Protestant Christianity. And so I wanted to try to clean all that up, basically grab a good linguistic brush and clean all that dust off what is, to me, a beautiful text. And while doing so, not only did I pay attention to these various different translations, I also went to the core of the Avestan, the original Avestan. I also looked at how poetry was conducted at the time of Zarathushtra, not just in Iranic lands, but also in surrounding cultures, how different philosophies and beliefs were at that time period, especially amongst the Indo-Iranian peoples. And definitely looked into not just written tradition about Zoroastrianism and Zarathustra and the Gathas, but also oral tradition that has been passed down by Zoroastrian families for centuries, possibly even millennia. And so I used all that to inform this translation in an attempt to not just clean all that away, but also formulate it and use the right words that put across the message of Zarathustra without even my own interference, my own biases coming in. Because the beautiful thing about Zoroastrianism is one can even disagree at points. You know, there's a point where Zarathustra is saying, well, since I'm doing this, I should be given 1,000 camels, you know, because he's just like us. He's just thinking, you know, I've been given this great task and I'm not getting any help. You know, what's up here? And so I thought that was funny. And, you know, I just shook my head at it, you know, because it is humanizing. But at the same time, one wouldn't expect a religious figure to be like, give me 1,000 camels and horses. So even in translating and getting to the truth, the real message of it all, I even found stuff I didn't even know was in the text, which was lovely. It became both an academic process for me and also a spiritual process, almost a meditative, personal, spiritual process for me as well in translating this. And so I wanted to also put it in a language that, you know, removed the these and thous and whatnot of the 1800s and put it in a way that anyone could pick up the text at, say, a Barnes and Noble or from Amazon or where have you, and be able to understand it immediately without needing to parse the language or even worse, need to have a companion text to understand it.
Right. Yeah, that is certainly exciting, and I can understand this is very much needed in the world right now. Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It is mazdayazni.com. So that is MAZDAYASNI.com. Now, Mazdayazni is an old term in Avestan for a Zoroastrian. So it literally means a worshiper of Mazda. And Mazda itself means wisdom, so a worshiper of wisdom. And on the website, you'll be able to find my academic and theological articles. I keep also a little blog with some thoughts. My most recent blog is about how reproductive rights are viewed in Zoroastrianism, which the ancient term for it is Mazdayazna, which is worship of wisdom. And I have a little section about my book coming out, The Sacred Gothas of Zarathushtra in the Old Avestan Canon. There's a resource section where one can find out how to become Zoroastrian, important links, places of pilgrimage and the like, and a link to my Zoroastrian Q&A podcast, which I do there. And yes, it even includes a contact section. So if anyone has any questions whatsoever about anything relating to what I've talked about today or to Zoroastrianism, feel free to shoot me a message. I'm happy to communicate with folks.
So again, the website is maznayazni.com. We will put that in the show notes, so take a look at that. And Pablo, again, is the author of The Sacred Gothas of Zarathustra and the Old Avestan Canon, a modern translation of ancient wisdom. Pablo Vazquez. Thank you so much for joining me today, Pablo. This has been enlightening. I seriously have been looking forward to it, because I love to learn new things, and this has always been something I've been interested in learning more about.
Oh, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for having me on board for sure.
So happy to do so. Thank you.
Radiate Wellness is an international community of holistic and alternative healers dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.